live in a time there is plenty of bad news and fake news circulated. Any event that happens, equally and opposite, fake news also comes in the social media. Fake news is a common feature now in social media. They say there are more fake news than real news. That is one. And most of us promote fake news by forwarding it without knowing it, without verifying it. And also, if you read or watch any news channels, most of the media industries thrive on not good news but bad news. Good news does not spread. Bad news spreads like wildfire. If there is a news about Afghanistan, the happiest people are media people because they have some news to sell. If there is nothing happening in the world, they will be paupers. They don't have income. So they wait for terrorism, they wait for some political scams, to sell the news. Newspapers, media channels, they all survive on this strategy of bad news. And gossips in our settings, families, and in our social culture, growing in large numbers. Pope Francis would say gossip is like a bomb. It blasts in our culture and destroys many people. That bomb is more dangerous than bombs in Afghanistan. Gossips that we promote and we do. And also what happens is that news readers at times become news interpreters. That means they do not provide news as it is. They interpret the news and give us. That means there is subjectivity with the news and they give their own views on the news. This is what happens. So we don't get the real news at times. And if you read one incident from 2 newspapers, you will find this problem. Then most of the people are self-made judges today. Today all of us judge others and all that. We think that we know everything. So it is in this context of today's issues that I mentioned today, one part of the gospel reading is very relevant. We can behave anyone like I mentioned. We can be gossiping people, we can be spreading bad news, we can be self-made judges, we can circulate without verifying fake news. We can be anyone actually. We can be interpreters of the events, not giving the event as event or incident as incident. We interpret the incident with our own salt and pepper added to it. So it is like that. Now, it is in this context Jesus wants his disciples to give proper news, proper feedback, proper interpretation or proper understanding. So Jesus uses his own personality to teach them few lessons. So he asks his disciples about himself. And there are views from the disciples from different angles. It's good to learn from Jesus and from the disciples this particular dialogue. Jesus asks, what do you think about me? And they give different views about Jesus. What do you learn from there? A lot of things to learn even for us today. First things to learn, it is good to ask others about yourself. Very important even today. You think that, or you and I think that I know about myself well. I don't need to ask opinions of others. But it is good to ask others, what do you think about me? What do you think about the way I am? What do you think about the way I talk? What do you think about the way I relate, approach? So all of us should do this. Why? Even Jesus did this. Jesus is God. Jesus knows all about himself. He is the only one who knows everything about himself. We don't know everything about ourselves. If you learn in psychology, Johari windows, 2 psychologists who prepared that theory, Joe and Harry, they say In our life, there is one corner of our life, neither I know nor you know about it. None of us will know. That area is completely unknown. But Jesus knows. Jesus knows everything about himself. Even though he knew everything about himself, he teaches a lesson. He asks about himself to others. What do you think about me? The way I work miracles, the way I move about, the way I talk. So, humble as Jesus, he was willing to ask. And ask whom? Don't ask any Tom, Dick and Harry. Ask your close friends, people with whom will live. Learn from them. Good to ask. Why? Socrates, one who lived much before Jesus, a Greek philosopher, he used to say this axiom, know thyself. Know thyself means that's one of the things we are not known much. So the entire life should be exploring myself. Know thyself. One of the recent former Secretary Generals of United Nations, he died in the last century, in the middle of the last century, in plane crash. His name is Dag Hammarskjöld, a Swedish man. He had a autobiography which was known as Markings autobiography. When they found this autobiography after his death, they found one particular statement he has written in his autobiography, very captivating statement. It says this, the longest and the toughest journey is journey within yourself. The longest and the toughest journey is journey within yourself. What does it mean? To take a journey to yourself is tough. That means trying to know yourself, understand yourself. And first step towards that is ask others about yourself. But journey towards others, we are all experts. We are experts to take a journey towards others. What the other person is doing, where she is going, what she is thinking about, what he is talking about, and which place he has gone. That we are experts. But we are not that expert to take the journey into oneself. That is tough. Jesus did this. That's the first lesson to learn. Second lesson, give honest feedback when somebody asks. Don't flatter people without basis. Honest feedback. And don't give opinions of others. Did you hear that the person was telling about you? You don't need to give all those. If you have something to say from yourself, you say. So Jesus asks, what do you think about me? Who do you say that I am? So these disciples are exactly like we are today. You know those people there, no, they are saying you are a prophet. Then other disciples say, you are saying you are Elijah come back to life. Punarjanma, rebirth. You are a person who are come back to life. Jesus was probably annoyed with this type of answers and feedback which the disciples gave. None of these feedbacks were coming from their heart, coming from their selves, which had any personal view about Jesus. Then Jesus, I don't want those answers. I want your personal feedback, honest feedback, and that should be truthful and good. So when we give feedback also, be careful. Don't flatter, praise the person to the highest level just to please the person. That is also not good. Don't harm people, don't hurt people by the way you speak, the words you use. Words can harm people, hurt people, or even help people. So when we give feedback, be careful. Is it honest? Is it also hurting the other person? That's what we need to give. So this is what Jesus expected from the disciples. Third thing, when you give feedback, try to understand the person without any prejudices or biases. What do I mean by that? You should not judge a person in order to hurt that person because some former experience and incidents that you have built up in your mind, and from that you try to judge that person. So you give your feedback and try to understand the person without any prejudices, without any biases. That means try to listen to that person. try to understand that person to what he or she says and what he or she does not say. So don't just judge by seeing that person's one action or one word. This is what we normally do. We try to judge a person from one incident, 2 incidents, 10 incidents, even 100 incidents. You are unable to understand that person. So most of us do that. Most of us perceive people from what we see or hear. Person is not what we see or hear. Person is much more than what you see or hear. I am not what you see and what you hear. That is very little of me. Exactly like that, each one of us. So we sometimes make wrong judgments by what we just see or hear. So Jesus asked honest feedback, not by misjudging, but understanding Jesus. And we have beautiful answer from Peter. He says, "You are the Christ." That means Christ means a Greek word. Equivalent of that word is Messiah in Hebrew. Both mean anointed. What's the meaning of anointed? You need to understand the biblical context of the word Christ. We always say the phrase Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, when we say Jesus was not named when he was born or had the rituals in the temple, his name was not put as Jesus Christ. His name was Jesus only. Christ comes later, that was added, and Saint Paul used to address in his writings, letters, Jesus Christ. Normally when we put our names, we add along with our name Father's name sometimes. That means Jesus Christ. Christ is not Jesus Father's name, not even the family name. I put, for example, along with my name, my family name. So when we hear the word Christ, it is neither Jesus Father's name, it is nor Jesus family name. What is the meaning of Christ? It's a usage by Saint Paul, which we now use. Jesus Christ. Christ means anointed. Who are anointed in the Bible? Kings, prophets. And there is a great anointed whom the Israel waited, the one who is going to come, who will liberate them from their oppressions and tyranny of life. So the whole Israel was waiting for a Christ who will come, a Messiah who would come, who would save them from the colonization, because Israel was several times colonized. We were colonized by British before independence. Exactly the same way Israel was colonized by several foreign nations: Assyrians, Babylonians, Greeks under Alexander the Emperor, and finally during Jesus' time, Romans. So Israel was waiting and waiting for a savior. They thought that savior is a political liberator, a political revolutionary who would free them from the clutches of the Roman emperors and Roman Empire. But that is not the Christ Bible was talking about. But people misunderstood. So when Peter said, "You are the Christ," we exactly do not know what he meant by Christ. Was he meaning a political liberator that Jesus is, or the Messiah who would free them from the clutches of not Roman colonization, from sin? So Messiah, that is Jesus, which Saint Paul meant, he was the one to liberate us from all our sinfulness. That is the real Messiah. So that may not be understood properly by Peter, because later Peter says, "You are not going to suffer, you are not going to die, because you are the Messiah," Peter exclaimed. Then Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan." Why? Peter has not really understood Jesus. He still thinks this Jesus is a political leader. So when Jesus said, "I am going to suffer, I am going to be crucified," the disciples, especially Peter, could not understand that. How? He is Messiah, no? He is going to save us from these Romans. So Peter says, no, that will not happen to you, Peter says. And Peter blocks his path. Then Jesus says, "Get behind me. You are not understood." what you said. So that was the problem, even understanding Jesus. No, sometimes we behave like Peter, with our previous notions about others. We try to understand and judge people. In this sense, there is a way of judging, self-judging our words and expressions about others. Socrates gives a 3-filter formula. When you speak something about somebody or something about something to another person, Socrates has got this formula. What are this formula? When you say something about somebody to someone, you just check. First question you need to ask is it true? Means what you're going to say to somebody, is it true and factual? If you heard from somebody, it need not be true. That's the first question. That's a filter of truth. Second one, filter of goodness. Ask a question, is it good news? Is it good? Or is it a bad news? Something wrong you are talking about. So when you say something to someone, is it something good or bad? Even if it is factual, is it a bad news or good news? If it is bad, don't speak. Good news enough for us to spread. That's the second filter of goodness. Third filter, Socrates says, filter of usefulness. What is usefulness? That matter you are going to share with somebody, is it useful to each other? Useful to me and useful to you? If it is not useful, helpful to any one of us, don't proceed. Filter of usefulness. All that we express even today should be true, should be good, and finally should be useful and helpful to each other.